They laughed at him in court until he told them who he was, and by then it was too late to take it back. The courthouse in Springfield, Missouri wasn't packed, but it wasn't empty either. It was a regular Tuesday, at least that's what everyone thought. The air inside was stiff, stale, like the kind that clings to bad decisions and bitter endings. Ceiling fans spun above, barely doing their job, while the clerk flipped through paperwork that didn't seem urgent, but somehow always was. Darius Langston sat quietly at the defendant's table. Gray slacks, button-up shirt, no tie. He had wire-rimmed glasses and a neutral expression, the kind of face you forget unless you're paying attention. And no one was. Well, no one except two officers in the back row slouched in their chairs like they owned the place. Deputy Chase Wilburn, thick-necked and red-faced, nudged his partner, Officer Trent Garrison, and tilted his head toward Darius. "Look at that," Chase muttered. "Another one playing dress-up for the judge." Trent chuckled under his breath. Bet he practiced saying, "Yes, Your Honor," in the mirror this morning. Neither of them whispered low enough. Darius didn't flinch. He didn't even look their way. He just sat there, fingers gently folded on the table, eyes forward. The bailiff called for order. Judge Margaret Duvall, an older woman with sharp features and an even sharper tongue, entered the courtroom and took her seat. Everyone stood, then sat. The case was called. State of Missouri versus Darius Langston. Murmurs rippled through the small crowd. Nobody knew the name. It didn't carry weight here, yet. The prosecutor stood, a smug younger man named Kyle Edmonds, hair slicked back, tie too tight. He scanned Darius like he was scanning a menu, already knowing what he was going to pick apart. "Your Honor," Kyle began, "we're here today because this man, Mr. Langston, refused to comply during a routine traffic stop. He was aggressive, evasive, and ultimately had to be restrained." Chase and Trent leaned back, satisfied. Kyle continued, "But what's most disturbing is that when asked for identification, Mr. Langston provided a false name. That alone is a felony." Judge Duvall raised an eyebrow. "Is this true, Mr. Langston?" Darius didn't rush. He looked up slowly, adjusting his glasses with a single finger. "No, Your Honor, it is not." That was all he said. A few people smirked, the kind of smirk people wear when they think they've seen this story 100 times. The judge pressed her lips together but said nothing more, for now. Meanwhile, Chase whispered again. "He's got that Ivy League tone. Thinks he's smarter than the law." Trent added, "Let him keep talking. He'll trip himself up." They didn't know. Not yet. Darius leaned back in his seat, calm. He wasn't here to impress anyone. He wasn't here to win points. He was here for something bigger. Outside, thunder rumbled. A storm was rolling in, but the real one was already inside. But the courtroom didn't know that the storm wasn't in the sky. It was sitting at the defense table, quiet as ever. 5 days earlier, Highway 60, just outside of Springfield. Darius had been on the road for hours. No music, no distractions, just the sound of tires humming against the pavement and his thoughts for company. He wasn't rushing, but he had a destination. The house he grew up in. Well, what was left of it. The roof had caved in years ago, and the porch sagged like it missed the weight of someone who used to sit on it. He had just passed a faded gas station when the flashing lights hit his rear-view mirror, blue and red. A patrol car tucked behind an old billboard had pulled out like it had been waiting. Darius pulled over right away, no hesitation. He rolled down his window before the cruiser even stopped behind him. Officer Trent Garrison approached first. "License and registration," he barked. "No, good afternoon." No explanation. Darius didn't react. He already had his wallet out. He handed over his ID. Trent squinted at it. "Darius? Lampton?" "Langston," Darius corrected. Trent glanced at the ID again, then back at Darius. "You from around here?" "Used to be." Trent handed it off to Chase Wilburn, who had walked up to the passenger side. "What brings you back?" Trent asked, leaning in slightly. "Visiting old property," Darius replied. Trent wasn't satisfied. "You always drive a rental with out-of-state plates?" "I fly for work. Rentals come with the territory." That answer was too clean, too calm. Chase didn't like it. He tapped the glass with 2 fingers. "Step out of the vehicle." Darius blinked. "Is there a reason?" "You match a description," Chase said vaguely. "Man seen casing homes down County Road 12. "That's not where I was." Chase's voice sharpened. "Step out of the car." Darius looked between them. He'd been here before, different cities, different badges, same script. He stepped out, slowly, hands in plain view. They patted him down. No resistance, no complaints, just patience. Then came the twist. Trent opened the back door of the cruiser. "We're going to need you to come down to the station." "For what?" Darius asked, not moving. "You'll find out." Chase smirked. "Unless you'd rather resist. That your plan?" Darius exhaled through his nose. "No." They cuffed him, tight. And just like that, he was in the back seat, watching the sky get darker through a metal grate. At the station, things got worse. They questioned him for hours, accused him of everything from trespassing to resisting arrest. They said he was combative, that he refused to give ID. "Funny," Darius said quietly. "I thought you had my ID the moment you walked up." They didn't like that answer. They made calls, none of which seemed to go anywhere. They ran his prints. Nothing came back, not under the names they expected. Meanwhile, Darius said very little, never raised his voice, never asked for special treatment. That's what confused them most. Who sits in a holding cell for hours, stone silent, like he's waiting for something, like he knows something? And in that silence, the officers filled the space with their own assumptions. They laughed outside the cell, called him Harvard and professor, said he was probably some soft academic who thought he could outsmart country cops. Darius just sat, like a chess player who'd already seen the endgame. But they weren't playing chess. They were playing with fire, and they didn't even smell the smoke. The holding cell smelled like sweat, bleach, and bad coffee. A flickering light above added insult to injury, buzzing like it was doing Darius a favor by staying on at all. There were 4 men in the cell. 2 were passed out on benches, snoring. 1 sat rocking back and forth, muttering a prayer under his breath. And then there was Darius, still, watching, thinking. Across from him, a young guy in his 20s named Raymond Banks finally broke the silence. "You ain't from around here," he said, eyeing Darius's clothes. "Ain't hard to tell." "No," Darius said. Raymond leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What they got you in for? Speeding, loitering, DBB?" Darius gave him a look, not surprised, just tired. Raymond chuckled. "Man, I'm playing. I know how they do it out here. You breathe too deep and you're resisting arrest." Darius didn't laugh. "You don't talk much, huh?" Raymond asked. "I talk when it matters." That shut Raymond up for a minute. Then he nodded, like he respected that. "Name's Ray, short for Raymond, but folks around here just call me Numbers." "Why?" "Because they say I've been booked so many times I should have a jersey number." Darius didn't smile. "You proud of that?" Ray paused. "Nah, just numb to it." One of the guys snoring in the corner stirred, mumbled something about "damn cops," then went right back to sleep. Darius looked around the cell. Every face here told a story, and none of them ended in justice. He turned back to Raymond. "You ever think about leaving?" "Every day." "Why don't you?" Raymond laughed bitterly. "And go where? With what? I got 2 strikes and a record that follows me like a shadow. Don't nobody want a dude like me bagging groceries, let alone working a job that pays more than 10 an hour." Darius nodded. He'd heard it before, too many times. "But I'll tell you this," Raymond added. You don't belong in here. I can feel it." Before Darius could answer, a guard opened the door and called out, "Langston, court time." Raymond looked up, eyebrows raised. "You fighting it?" Darius stood. "Always." As he stepped out, Raymond called after him, "Whatever you got going on out there, don't let this place change it." Darius paused in the hallway, then glanced back. "I won't." The guard didn't speak to him on the way, just walked fast, like he didn't want to be seen escorting a man who held himself that calmly in cuffs. Down the hall, past peeling paint and bad lighting, the courtroom waited. Outside, the sky had turned a deep gray, like the whole town was holding its breath. But inside that courtroom, nobody knew they were about to lose theirs. Back in the courtroom, things picked up where they left off. Judge Duvall tapped her pen against the bench. "Mr. Langston, you've been accused of providing false identification and resisting a lawful stop. Do you have legal counsel?" Darius shook his head. "I'll represent myself." A wave of murmurs swept across the room. Kyle Edmonds smirked like he'd just won a free lunch. "Very well," the judge said, eyebrows raised. "Proceed." Kyle wasted no time. He strutted to the front, pulling up documents like he was about to conduct a high-stakes game show. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, pacing slowly, "what we have here is a textbook example of defiance. A man with no ties to our community, driving with out-of-state plates, refusing to comply with officers' commands, and when asked to identify himself, he provided a fake name." Kyle turned to Darius. "Isn't that true, Mr. Langston?" Darius sat back, calm. "No." Kyle forced a chuckle. "So, you're saying 2 trained officers are lying under oath?" Darius didn't blink. "I'm saying what they said doesn't match what happened." Trent and Chase leaned forward in their seats. Chase whispered, "He's still got that tone, like he's lecturing a class." The judge interrupted. "Mr. Edmonds, call your first witness." Chase Wilburn took the stand. He sat like he'd been rehearsing this moment in front of a mirror for years. Kyle walked him through the events of the stop, how Darius was agitated, how he hesitated to provide his ID, and how he grew defensive when asked to step out of the vehicle. "Did he threaten you?" Kyle asked. Chase nodded confidently. "With his tone? Yeah. You could tell he was one of those types, always looking for a reason to sue someone." "And did he provide his ID?" "He gave us something, but it didn't match what came back in our system. That's when we knew he was hiding something." Darius scribbled something on his notepad. The judge noticed. "Mr. Langston, do you wish to cross-examine?" Darius stood, walked slowly to the stand. He didn't raise his voice, didn't try to impress anyone, just looked Chase in the eye. "You say I was defensive. Did I raise my voice?" "No." "Did I curse at you?" "No." "Did I threaten you physically?" "No, but like I said, your tone," Darius cut in. "So your definition of threat includes being spoken to calmly?" Chase's jaw worked, but he had no answer. Darius continued, "And the ID I gave you, did it have my photo?" "Yes." "My name?" Chase hesitated. "It had a name, just not one that matched anything in the system." "Or," Darius said, stepping closer, "maybe your system wasn't connected to the right database." "Objection." Kyle stood up fast. "Your Honor, Mr. Langston is speculating." Judge Duvall looked at Darius. "Stick to the facts, Mr. Langston." Darius nodded. "I am." Next up was Officer Trent Garrison. Same script, same exaggerated pauses, same subtle code words. "He looked like he was casing properties," Trent said. "We get a lot of that out by County Road 12. "What made you think I was casing houses?" Darius asked. Trent shrugged. "You were driving slow, looking around. That's what people do when they're scouting." "I was using GPS," Darius said, "and looking for a property that legally belongs to me." More murmurs. Kyle's face tightened. Darius walked back to his table, picked up a document, and held it up. "This," he said, "is the deed. My name is on it. My family's name is on it. The same name you claim didn't show up in your system." Judge Duvall leaned forward. "I also have my birth certificate, a federal clearance letter, and 3 forms of photo ID," Darius added, placing them one by one on the table like playing cards in a slow, deliberate hand. Kyle looked uneasy now. "Where did you get those documents?" he asked. "I brought them with me," Darius said. "Why would you carry those around?" Darius looked directly at him. "Because I've lived long enough to know what kind of country I'm walking through." The room got quiet. Judge Duvall asked for a recess. Everyone needed a minute. Everyone except Darius. The hallway buzzed with whispers. People pulled out their phones. Someone asked the clerk, "What's his real job again, did he say?" Even Kyle looked shaken. Back inside the courtroom, Judge Duvall tapped her mic. "Mayor Langston, before we continue, would you please state your current occupation for the record?" Darius stood. He took a breath, a long one, like he'd been holding it in since the moment the cuffs clicked shut. "My name is Darius Langston. I'm the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation." Every neck in the courtroom turned. Some jaws dropped. Others just stopped breathing. Kyle sat down, stunned. Chase and Trent went pale. Judge Duvall froze. You could have heard a pin drop in there, or a badge hit the floor. But that silence didn't last, because next came the consequences. Judge Duvall didn't speak right away. Her eyes were locked on Darius, searching for some sign that he was bluffing. He wasn't. She looked to the bailiff. "Get me confirmation. Now." The bailiff nodded and rushed out of the room. Meanwhile, Kyle Edmonds sat stiff in his chair, blinking like someone had just slapped the smug off his face. He cleared his throat, tried to salvage the moment. Your Honor, even if that's true, Darius cut in calmly. It is. Kyle kept pushing. It doesn't change the facts of this case. It changes everything, the judge snapped. Her voice echoed, sharp and sudden. Sit down, Mr. Edmonds. Kyle sat. Trent and Chase, they were frozen, no longer leaning back, no more chuckles, just wide eyes and cold sweat. Darius turned toward them slowly, not angry, not smug, just steady. You two thought I was just another man with a suit and a nice car, someone you could rough up, book, laugh about later over drinks. He walked toward the jury, speaking to them now. They didn't ask real questions. They didn't investigate. They profiled, assumed, and abused their authority. Then they lied about it in this courtroom. The judge didn't stop him. No one did. Darius took a step closer to the stand. You know how many people don't survive that kind of stop? You know how many don't have cameras, resources, or titles to protect them? He paused. I wanted to see it for myself. What people were talking about when they called my office and said things were broken here. I didn't come as a director. I came as a man, a black man in a rented car with out-of-state plates, and every fear they had was real. The bailiff returned, holding a printed document, whispered in the judge's ear. She nodded once, then looked back at Darius. Confirmed, she said. Director of the FBI, appointed 2 months ago, Senate confirmed, background clearance level, top tier. The courtroom buzzed, but no one dared speak above a whisper now. Darius sat back down, calm as ever. Judge Duvall turned to Kyle. You're dismissed from this case. To Trent and Chase, leave your badges on the table and wait outside. You'll be contacted. They didn't argue, didn't even speak, just stood up, pale and shaky, and walked out. Trent's hand trembled as he unpinned his badge. The judge looked down at Darius. Do you wish to press charges? I'm not here for revenge, he said. I'm here to fix something. She nodded slowly. Then I hope this is the start. A few people in the gallery clapped quietly. Most just stared, unsure if they were witnessing justice, or just a temporary pause in a much bigger problem. But for the first time in that room, the silence didn't come from fear. It came from respect. The story didn't end in that courtroom, not really. By the next morning, every major network had picked it up. Headlines ran from coast to coast. FBI director mistaken for criminal in Missouri courtroom sting. Systemic bias exposed by the man in charge. How a traffic stop became a federal wake-up call. Darius didn't speak to reporters. He didn't hold a press conference or make a statement. He let the facts do the talking. Trent and Chase were suspended, then fired. Internal investigations opened into previous arrests they made. Over 40 cases were pulled for review, some thrown out completely. Kyle Edmonds resigned within the week. Judge Duvall? She sent a private letter to Darius, a full-page apology, handwritten. But Darius never responded. Not out of pride, just focus. He got back on a plane, went back to D.C., and got to work. Because he knew something that courtroom had barely begun to understand. Fixing a system doesn't start with a speech. It starts by seeing what others refuse to see. It starts by showing up, by listening when others are laughing, by speaking calmly when they expect you to shout. It starts with reminding people that titles don't make you human. Empathy does. So the next time someone judges a man by what he wears, how he talks, or where he's from, they'll remember that quiet man in gray slacks, wire-rimmed glasses, and a name they thought didn't matter. Until it did. If you've ever felt dismissed, overlooked, or wrongly judged, this story's for you. Not just to feel seen, but to stay standing. Speak up, ask questions, and don't ever let someone else decide your worth.